If you think about parallel worlds and the strange disappearances of people, you'll realize that the world around you is just a small part of the visible spectrum you used to call the environment. In addition to houses, trees, cats, and dogs, we're waiting for space-time gaps, zones of anomalous activity, mirages, failures in the matrix, and other nuances of reality that are thousands of times more common than you'd think. We'll talk about some of them today in this video. Enjoy watching. It was a fog, an ominous fog. On July 14, 1911, there was chaos at a train station in Rome, Italy. A crowd of wealthy people were fanning themselves, drinking lemonade and sangria, adjusting their hats and smoking cigars. Young women were excitedly asking, "When will it begin?" All these rich folks were waiting for the time when they could finally go on a cruise on the new road and see the sights. Reporters were interviewing and writing stories non-stop, and Sonetti executives were bowing to the passengers. And regular folks and street vendors were looking at them with envy, wishing they were in their shoes. You could tell from their eyes, "I wish I were in their place. Holy Virgin, why do some people get everything and others nothing?" But they didn't know that there was nothing to envy. It would be a good idea to pity the poor travelers. Everything was happening incredibly fast and at the same time, terribly slow. Before entering the super-long tunnel under the Lombardy, the travelers saw a strange fog. According to eyewitnesses, the fog was thick and milky white. Some people were frightened and jumped out of the train, which appeared to disappear afterwards. These eyewitnesses told what happened to the train. The eyewitness testimony was important because the train never arrived at its destination, and no matter how many people searched the tunnel afterward for signs of derailment or human remains, nothing was ever found, and now a little bit of information to ponder. Many years later, a missing train suddenly appeared in Mexico City. It whizzed through the central station at high speed, made a loud noise, and was never seen again. At the same time, Mexican psychiatrist Jose Saxena told a case from his practice. A total of 104 Italians were admitted to a mental hospital within a week. All of them claimed to have traveled to Mexico by train. A stroll down Broadway. The NYPD archives hold another equally mysterious story that doesn't make sense when you think about it. Some of you may already be familiar with this story. However, it's relevant here. It was November 1952, and it was getting dark on Broadway in New York. A car hit an unknown man and killed him. The driver and eyewitnesses said the victim came out of nowhere. It was as if he had fallen from above. The police found one strange detail. The man was wearing an old-fashioned suit, but what surprised them more was an ID card from 80 years ago. Police also found business cards in the victim's pocket, indicating that he worked as a traveling salesman. Just so you know, a traveling salesman is a person who offers customers merchandise through samples and catalogs. One of the detectives checked the address on the business card and was even more surprised. He discovered that the street listed on the business card had been renamed more than half a century ago. In an old police archive, they decided to check the lists of residents in the neighborhood from the turn of the last century. There they found our mystery salesman, and the name and address matched the information on the business card. Then they interviewed all the people with that last name living in New York, and found an old lady who said that her father had disappeared exactly 70 years ago under very mysterious circumstances. She said he went for a walk on Broadway and never came home. The woman gave the police a photo of a young man who looked like the man who was hit by the car, holding the girl in his arms with a smile. The photo was labeled with the date April 1884. The famous writer Stephen King shared the story of time travel with the world, but he wasn't the first to explore this topic. Even in fairy tales from long ago, we can find references to travelers who disappeared without a trace after meeting elves or magical fairies. There are some pretty amazing stories about people who disappeared without a trace in the Middle Ages. At the time, people thought it was the work of the devil. These days, though, we're a lot more skeptical. There are still plenty of missing people, and there have been some strange cases where people have suddenly appeared in a city with no memory of who they are or where they came from. Psychiatrists deal with such people, but with little success. Some people remember events from their childhood, but they don't know what happened to them in the last few weeks or months. There's no solution to the phenomenon of people disappearing. There are only versions and hypotheses, and they all revolve around one thing. We still know nothing about the structure of our world. We're like children, wandering lost in the vastness of the universe. That's what some recently declassified documents about the scientists' experiments tell us. Project Montauk was one of the U.S. government's secret experiments. The experiments were carried out at an abandoned U.S. Air Force radar station. The project got started with the Philadelphia experiment, which was all about creating technology that would make ships invisible to locators. The 1943 project was a huge success. The Eldridge ship was allegedly invisible to radar and even traveled to another dimension, but then it reappeared off the coast of Virginia. Since most of the crew members died and the rest were on the verge of insanity, the government stopped funding the experiment. Nevertheless, scientists and military officials were impressed with the results. They wanted to keep studying teleportation and interdimensional travel. So in 1960, the Montauk project was launched under Dr. John von Neumann's leadership. Scientists in the Montauk project studied the psychological changes of people who traveled between universes. They wanted to figure out why the Philadelphia experiment had such an effect on people. Teleportation is a good thing, but if everyone dies or goes crazy, it won't do any good. The scientists' theory is that we're born with a time reference point linked to electromagnetic fields that are unique to our planet. So, this sudden shift to another two-dimensional plane was fatal for all the crew members. John von Neumann is said to have solved this problem during the Montauk project experiments by creating a computer model of the Earth and changing the time reference points. According to documents, he managed to send people to other dimensions without any consequences. However, after completing his experiments in 1967, he sent a report to Congress on his findings regarding mind control and interdimensional travel. Upon receiving these findings, Congress immediately stopped funding and terminated the project for fear of any undesirable mass repercussions. Some people even believe that time isn't a constant value and that there are places on Earth with unusual chronometry. The theory of time gaps is popular among science fiction writers and even scientists, but there isn't yet enough evidence to prove it one way or another. What we do know is that there are many more anomalous zones on the planet than we previously assumed. The most famous is the Bermuda Triangle, part of the Devil's Belt, the Tunguska area in Russia, where almost a century ago a meteorite with the same name fell, and even the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and a lot of territories that suddenly made themselves known. Do you believe in the existence of interdimensional travel? Or maybe you were lucky enough to try it personally? Be sure to write in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next release. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.